Hello everyone and welcome to my Q&A vlog. Today we answer 6 questions related to politics, governance, and citizenship. So without further ado, let's get started. Question number 1. What is the difference between state and nation? To start with, the elements of both the state and the nation are different. The state has 4 elements: population, territory, government, and sovereignty. In the absence of even one element, the state cannot really be a state. On the other hand, a nation is always characterized by a group of people who have a strong sense of unity and common consciousness, like common territory, common race, common religion, common language, common history, common culture, and common political aspirations. Simply put, a state is a political concept while a nation is an ethnic concept. Question number 2. What is the difference between state and government? Going back, a state has 4 key elements and one of them is government. A government is the only instrument through which the will of the state is expressed. It can exist without a state, while the state cannot exist without the government. It is as good as saying government is government alone. To illustrate it clearly, way back in the Commonwealth era in the Philippines when our president was Manuel L. Quezon, there's already what we call a government. However, Philippines is not yet a state because we are still under the American colonization and we have no sovereignty. To be able to create a state, all 4 key elements must be present: the population, the territory, the government, and the sovereignty. Question number 3. Why is citizenship considered as an important aspect under our Constitution? According to the journal article, Nationalistic Influences on the Philippine Law of Citizenship, written by Cornelius J. Peck, the Constitution of the Philippines confers other benefits upon citizens and accordingly inhibitions or disadvantages upon aliens, whether temporarily or permanently residing in the country. Thus, public agricultural timber or mineral lands and other resources may be acquired or developed only by Philippine citizens or business associations 60% owned by Philippine citizens. The grant of franchises to operate public utilities is similarly limited. In conclusion, when the Filipino First policy has been constitutionalized through the 1987 Constitution, the use and enjoyment of the nation's marine wealth are reserved exclusively for Filipinos. Agricultural lands of the public land may be transferred only to Filipino citizens. Executive and managing officers of public utilities must be citizens of the Philippines. Former President Corazon Aquino puts it best when she described the 1987 Constitution truly reflective of the aspirations and ideals of the Filipino people. Question number 4. What type of government we have in the Philippines? The Philippines is a republic with a presidential form of government wherein power is equally divided among its 3 branches: the executive, legislative, and judicial. One basic consequence in the presidential system of government is the principle of separation of powers, wherein legislation belongs to Congress, execution belongs to executive, and the settlement of legal matters to the judiciary. The legislative branch is authorized to make laws, alter and repeal them through the power vested in the Philippine Congress. This institution is divided into the Senate and the House of Representatives. The executive branch is composed of the President and the Vice President, who are elected by direct popular vote and serve a term of 6 years. The Constitution grants the President authority to appoint his cabinet. These departments form a large portion of the country's bureaucracy. The judicial branch holds the power to settle controversies involving rights that are legally demandable and enforceable. This branch determines whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part and instrumentality of the government. It is made up of a Supreme Court and lower courts. The Constitution expressly grants the Supreme Court the power of judicial review as the power to declare a treaty, international or executive agreement, law, presidential decree, proclamation, order, instruction, ordinance, or regulation. Question number 5. Can the state acquire the properties where the informal settlers are located? Is it the obligation of the state to relocate them? Yes and yes. Through the power of eminent domain of the state, as referenced in the Section 9, Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution, the government could take and appropriate properties regardless if it is an informal settlement or just a private property for public use or based on public demand given that there will be compensation for it. As for the obligation of the state to relocate informal settlers, a significant legislation relevant to this is the RA 10752, otherwise known as the Right-of-Way Act, signed by President Aquino in July 27, 2015, which states that the government, through the Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council or HUDC, and the National Housing Authority or the NHA, in coordination with the LGUs and implementing agencies concerned, shall establish and develop resettlement sites for informal settlers, including the provision of adequate basic services and community facilities in anticipation of informal settlers that have to be removed from the right-of-way site or location of future infrastructure projects, pursuant to the provision of Republic Act No. 7279, otherwise known as the Urban Development and Housing Act of 1992. Question number 6. Read the case of Oposa versus Pactoran. What does the doctrine of intergeneration means? As the current and past administration has been trying its best for economic development in relation to good governance? The doctrine of intergeneration, or the intergenerational equity, is the distribution of income and wealth over generations. It requires governments to operate in such a way that does not disadvantage future generations. This would include government spending, borrowing, and resource use. It would not be considered equitable intergenerationally to use all resources available at the present to enrich only the current generation. This would significantly damage and disadvantage future generations. When I think of the past administration, first thing that comes to my mind is the controversial K-12 program and the efforts to align the Philippines with the global 12-year basic education cycle. I think the birth pains that came along with the revision of the education curriculum in the country could be seen until now, due to the fact that when K-12 was implemented back in school year 2012-2013, several problems manifested such as lack of facilities and instructional materials, teacher shortage, and the lack of trainings and seminars for teachers. Not that I'm maligning the intentions of the previous administration, it's just that the intention is good but the implementation is bad, and the receipts and signifiers of this is out there, with some articles citing the need for curriculum review as our country's educational ranking slips down worldwide. I just hope that over time, the results of K-12 implementation would come to fruition. As for the Duterte administration, one particular thing that stands out is the administration's ambitious Build, Build, Build program launched in 2017, which seeks to stimulate economic activity and generate jobs to cut poverty and decongest the metropolis. But behind all these concept arts for these big-ticket projects that seem like it came out of a wondrous data hallucination is the shrouded reality. The ambitious project has been marred by several problems, including missed infrastructure spending targets, underspending, and the failure to jack up public infrastructure spending, contrary to officials' pronouncements. Senator Drilon even called this out and said that the project was a dismal failure due to it failing to provide expected figures. For now, what we can only do, especially as students and the future of our nation, is to analyze and pick the right leaders in the next election who will decide on behalf of us, to which these people will manifest what the majority of us want for our country. So go out there, get registered, and vote in the next elections.